with, like I said, with Donald Trump to evangelicals himself as a Christian crusader who helped end Roe v. Wade. Former President Donald J. Trump told an evangelical gathering that no president had done more for Christians than he did. So it's been a year since Roe v. Wade was overturned. And since then, we've heard just about every single thing on the issue that you could hear from Trump. We've heard Trump blame the GOP for being too harsh on abortion and saying that it was their fault for losing the 2022 midterms because they're too harsh on abortion and they're too traditional, and that the reason his candidates, in his mind, and the reason that he is still doing good with the GOP is that he's not as harsh on abortion or whatever. But what people would point out when he tried to make those claims is that, dude, you appointed the people that overturned Roe v. Wade. So you can't go and blame the Republicans now for being too harsh. But now here we have Trump saying that, championing the fact that he appointed the judges that overturned Roe v. Wade. So, where does this guy stand? And then he gets asked about a national abortion ban, and again, he doesn't outright say he's for it or he's against it. He just knows that he's glad that he's implemented the judges that overturned Roe v. Wade. So you never quite know what you're going to get from Donald Trump when it comes to this issue of abortion. So it says, 1 year after the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, former President Donald J. Trump reminded a gathering of evangelical activists in the nation's capital how he had shaped the court's conservative supermajority that ended nearly 50 years of constitutional protections for abortion. Appearing at a Faith and Freedom Coalition gala in Washington on Saturday night, he cited his appointment of 3 of the 6 judges who voted to strike down the law as a capstone of his presidency. And he cast himself as an unflinching crusader for the Christian right in a meandering speech that lasted nearly 90 minutes. No president has ever fought for Christians as hard as I have, he said, adding, I got it done, and nobody thought it was even a possibility. It was his eighth appearance by Mr. Trump in front of the group, whose support he is seeking to consolidate in the crowded GOP competition for the 2024 nomination, though he is the frontrunner in the field. He said that Republican voters were skeptical of claims by some of his rivals that they were stronger opponents of abortion, and suggested that the skepticism had arisen on the campaign trail. A woman stood up and said, "This guy ended Roe v. Wade. How the hell can you go against him?" Mr. Trump said. A few thousand activists gave Mr. Trump an ovation when he mentioned the ruling, which he said gave conservatives leverage in the ongoing battle over abortion rights. Several hundred more filled an overflow room. You have the power for the first time, he said. Virtually all of Mr. Trump's rivals in the crowded GOP field appeared during the group's three-day Road to Majority conference at the Washington Hilton. The lineup included Ron DeSantis, Mike Pence. At a rally in front of the Lincoln Memorial earlier on Saturday, commemorating the court's ruling, Mr. Pence urged anti-abortion activists to continue fighting to place further restrictions on the procedure at the state level. I'm going to grab a napkin here. 1 second. Save the babies and we will save America, he said, adding, as the old book says, that many more are with us than are with them. Statistics have shown that that is simply inaccurate, and that a large majority of people are in favor of abortion rights. If you go watch my video from yesterday or 2 days ago now, it'll illustrate that fact. In a speech at the gathering a day earlier, Mr. Pence called on the entire 2024 Republican presidential field to pledge support for a national abortion ban at 15 weeks, a ban more extreme than what Trump has backed so far. David Porter, a Republican from Newport News, Virginia, who wore a Walk with Jesus hat to the rally, commended Mr. Trump for his imprint on the judiciary. He's my guy right now, he said. Mr. Trump sought to align himself with the faith community and said it was under attack. much like he was. Tonight, we're warriors in a righteous crusade to stop the arsonists, the atheists, the globalists, and the Marxists. Each indictment, he added, was a great badge of courage. I'm being indicted for you, he said. Mr. Trump's alliance with the Christian right is a study in political opportunism, one that has yielded prodigious dividends for both. In 2016, evangelical voters helped propel Mr. Trump to successive Republican primary victories in South Carolina and other key states, giving him a pathway to the nomination and ultimately the presidency. The influential electoral bloc demonstrated its willingness to look beyond the impidities of the twice-divorced Mr. Trump, whose extramarital affairs had long been tabloid fodder, and who came with a history of supporting abortion rights in the 1990s. Evangelical voters bought into Mr. Trump's populist narrative, as well as his pledges to carry out a hardline reset of the nation's immigration and trade policies to appoint pro-life justices. The group collected its returns during Mr. Trump's presidency when he cemented a supermajority on the Supreme Court. Mr. Trump has heralded his remake of the nation's highest court as he once again seeks the support of evangelical voters, this time beset by a cascade of indictments, including one in a hush money case involving a porn star. But even as Mr. Trump has highlighted his role in the right's fight to end abortion rights, he has repeatedly sidestepped questions about whether he would sign a federal abortion ban if Republicans managed to steer one through the divided Congress. Mr. Porter, the anti-abortion activist from Virginia, said Mr. Trump's evasiveness was concerning. Either you stand for what you believe or you don't, he said. Mr. DeSantis, who spoke on Friday at the Evangelical Conclave, has sought to stake out the right flank against Mr. Trump on abortion policy. He criticized the former president for suggesting that a 6-week abortion ban Mr. DeSantis had signed in Florida was too harsh. So this is really Trump's egotism and narcissism on full display here, because it's the political benefit of his position is that he could turn towards suburban women and turn towards the more middle America and go, sure, I might have overturned Roe v. Wade, and sure, we might not have that anymore, but at least I'm not as harsh as wanting to ban abortion after 15 weeks or whatever, and at least I don't want a 6-week ban like Ron DeSantis. So he's in this position of being able to reap the benefits of overturning Roe v. Wade while still not being viewed as harsh on the issue as some of his other GOP counterparts. But when these other GOPers are going to this event and giving their speeches and getting big rounds of applause and lots of admiration for their staunch stance against abortion rights, Trump just can't simply sit back and reap the political benefit of having this sort of ambiguous position that he has. He has to jump on the train and go, no, look, actually, it was me that did this. It was me that overturned Roe v. Wade. And to this small group of evangelical voters, that's going to get him applause and admiration. But what we're seeing is that middle America, independents, suburbanites, and women generally, people who put Trump into the White House in 2016, generally and overwhelmingly are for abortion rights in America. And they believe and it was a setback for women and for women's rights in the United States of America. So what Trump's doing here is he's shooting himself in the foot with that group of people in order to have some short-term applause and admiration from this religious group that he's seeking to court. And I'm not sure why he's doing it. It makes no sense politically. It makes no sense strategically. But I guess what we're seeing on full display is that Trump has no strategy and has very, very little sense in terms of what he decides to do and say on a daily basis, because he could totally stake out his ambiguous position. And yes, people would be pointing out, hey, Trump, you can't be all, oh, I didn't want this to happen now because you appointed the judges that overturned Roe v. Wade. And it would be a rightful thing to call him out on that. But Trump is so good at muddying the pot and throwing red herrings and falsehoods, and you get beat over the head with falsehoods and untruths and kernel of truths so much that your original point is lost in the sauce. And we're now, the conversation's been diverted, and the focus has been diverted to a bunch of other topics that Trump has brought up. And that's his number one political strength, it is muddying the pot. But when he's going out and saying, yeah, abortion rights, I overturned them, look at me, I did this for you, he's not realizing that sure, in this one room of people, that's gonna win you some applause, but the rest of America that is seeing Trump going out on a limb like this and practically bragging about overturning Roe v. Wade, they're seeing this and they're going, oh my God, the GOP is a party that is simply seeking to take people's rights away. And they're looking at their daughter, and they're looking at women in their life, and they're going, I don't want to grow up in a world where I had more rights than my daughter and these other women in my life. Okay, or however they relate. So yeah, not much political strategy here on display from Trump. I'd have to imagine that anybody that does, run the political strategy team for Trump, they have to see stuff like this and go, shut the fuck up, Trump, shut the F up. Okay, like, you're not doing yourself any favors by going out on a limb and reminding everybody about this. It's like, this is why, like, Trump's brashfulness and his you never know what you're gonna get, it helped him get into the office in 2016 because it was so novel and it was so crazy and zany and people, and it was so unfamiliar in politics. But now, it after years and years and years, we're seeing how it's, being bashful and saying the first thing that comes to your head and wanting to gain the approval of just the people in the room around you, saying whatever you have to say to gain approval of one particular group is not necessarily the best way to do politics and to run a campaign. So yeah, I think that if Donald Trump is ultimately defeated in 2024, which I've been predicting for a while that he will be, people are going to be looking at stuff like this and going, what was Trump thinking? What was he thinking? Or was he thinking at all? Probably not.